We will call this meeting to order. Board Clerk, will you do the roll call, please?
Directors Osborne, Veerkamp, and Zini and Dwyer present. Director Day is absent. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel I don't know. I had a flashback. I'm sorry. I apologize. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan.
Shall we start all over again?
Yeah, Tom Cumston is not here. He retired many years ago. I had a flashback. I apologize.
All right, so we'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I did not do a moment of silence, sorry. But oh well, I can't stay silent. All right, we'll move on to adopt the agenda. Board members, what is your privilege here?
I'll move to adopt as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been,
I would like to pull item 3 if we could before we get to all that.
we haven't done the consent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is just to approve the agenda,
Gotcha.
and then we'll,
Yeah,
got your
I'm ahead
message.
of myself.
All right, so we'll adopt the agenda. Any members from the public? No?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. This is for any public comment on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Osborne.
Right.
President Anzini does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda.
All right. Opportunity for the board to vote now. There it is.
Division 1, 2, 3, and 4, voting aye, motion carries.
We'll move on to the communications part of the agenda. General Manager.
Good morning. I have 2 today. First, we received an email from Eric Siri, I can't pronounce the last name, in appreciation of George Lopez and Justin Stockwell in the water and wastewater and recycled water division. He stated, George and Justin were so helpful and professional. They set the bar very high. Thank you so much for true professionals. Again, this is just one of many examples of our employees providing excellent service. The second item, I'm pleased to announce that EID, again, for I think the 25th year, received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. I won't read all the details, but it essentially reconfirms that we have excellent financial reporting to the public, providing all the documents and necessary items for the public to review. And I'm very proud of the fine work, not only done by the finance department, but also our retiring finance director, Mark Price. This is his last hurrah here today. He'll be here another couple weeks, but it's fitting to have him be recognized as well with the this achievement. So those are my 2 recognition items. And then I have 1 staff report later.
Okay. This is an opportunity for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak to the board regarding any item that's not on the agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. We do have somebody wishing to speak. You have the floor. Can we please have your name for the record?
Cheryl Blychester.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, I'd like to first of all start off by saying that I've had a very good relationship with the engineers working for EID, so I want to second the accolades for EID's, especially their engineers, John Kessler and Tracy Eden Bishop. They've been fabulous in their coordination. We have, and John Kessler was in charge of the rehabilitation of the dam at Prosper Falls, which is on my property. And so I wanted to thank you for all that cooperation. I have a couple of things to draw your attention to that need sort of immediate attention. And I've set up a couple of meetings at site with EID that Mr. Abercrombie, has refused to attend. And so I would like to urge the board to ask him please to attend this meeting, or at least your operations people. What's going on at the dam now, because of the reconfiguration and rehabilitation of the dam, we have a changed condition of the pond inundation. That, along with the Caldor fire debris and silt sedimentation that's coming down from the fire scar, it's just changed the whole dynamics of what's going on in the detention pond behind the dam. We have very hydritic soils, very fat soils coming down, and it's filling up the pond rapidly. And I've given you guys a permissible use license to work the boards in the dam that's on my property, but you've left the boards in now for months at the highest level that they go. And right now at high water, the water needs to be flowing through the pond as naturally as it possibly can be in order to flush the sediments that are coming down from the Caldor fire through the pond, in order to not to fill it up, so we can maintain some capacity in the pond. Because we all know, a drought coming up. We're going to be back on water rationing in Outingdale. And so we need to have as much capacity in that pond as we can. And you guys need to be on it a lot more than you are. And then the other thing is a safety issue. Your people at high water right now need to be wearing safety harnesses that need to be anchored somewhere to some granite on my property. You're going to need to reach an agreement with me about where that can be and how that can be obtained. But you absolutely need to be wearing safety harnesses. On Easter, we had the neighbor across the river's dog go over the dam. And my brother and I both have white water experience. We both have swift water rescue experience. We managed to rescue the dog, but it meant me getting in my swimming hole below the dam to get him, and he was all right. But it just pointed out to me, scared the heck out of all of us, and it pointed out to me how dangerous that dam is right now. You guys need to be on top of that too. And I haven't seen from you, although I've requested it, a program for what your plan is for inundating the pond under the conditional permissible use license, and also what you plan to do for safety there. I've been trying to meet with you. I've been trying to have meetings with you, and I don't know, Polson and Abercrombie are refusing. So that's my comments for now, and please set up a meeting with me. Please meet at the site with me. I'm trying really hard.
Thank you very much for your comments, and our general manager and staff have heard your comments, and we appreciate your commitment to the care of our area. Thank you.
For the record, Director Day arrived at 9:06 a.m.
All right, we'll move on to communications.
I do have one report that Jenny Downey will provide regarding our ability to participate in a low-income household water assistance program. Take it away, Jenny.
It's a mouthful, right?
Yes.
So good morning, members of the board. I'm Jenny Downey, Customer Service Manager here at the district. I'm here this morning to provide you with some information regarding the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program, otherwise known as LEWAP, because we all needed another acronym, right? So the district has submitted its application in order for its customers to be able to participate in the LEWAP program. A little bit closer, okay. We did get the official acceptance late last week that that we are accepted into the program. The district's participation will allow its customers to request assistance through the LEWAP program, which is a federal program providing federal financial assistance to low-income Californians to help manage their residential water utility costs and ensure they have access to safe and clean drinking water. California was allocated $116 million for this program, and the program will launch in May or June of this year and will end on August 31st of 2023. District customers who would like to apply for assistance will do so through the El Dorado County Department of Health and Human Services. From there, they will be the ones to determine if the customer is income eligible and what their benefit amount will be. That is then submitted to the Department of Community Services and Development for review and for final approval. If the customer is then approved, they can receive up to a one-time maximum credit of $2,000 that can be applied to either drinking water or wastewater service costs. The benefit can cover past due balance, current charges, fees, which include late fees, their taxes, or to cover utility costs that are included in rent. So there's a vast majority that money can go to. Payment for the approved amount will be sent to the district if any of that money does come to us, and will be applied towards the utility account. Any balances that remain as a credit on the account after their account should close would need to then be returned back to the program, so we'll have to watch for that. I wanted to let you guys know that on Friday we did update our website. We do have a section that has information on this, and we'll point them out to the state's website where they can sign up and receive notification once the program goes live. The district will have staff come back to the board upon completion of this calendar year, and then again when the program concludes in 2023. And that's all I have for you.
I have a couple comments, a couple questions. One is, this is beneficial to the residents who are our customers in EID. The other is that I wanted to make sure we have this clear, that they can only apply online, right?
No, I do not believe that they can only apply online. They would have to go through the Department of Health and Human Services here in El Dorado County, and they can go visit them in person, but I believe they also have an online portion.
That was my other concern, is people of low income sometimes don't have internet and don't know where to go. So knowing that, what can EID do to make sure that those people are reached?
We will, once the program goes live, be putting information out through social media in our waterfront, or if customers call in and they're having trouble paying their bill, we will point them in the right direction of how they can go get that assistance.
And the ending of the program is next year in August.
August 2023, yes.
And this is open now for EID customers?
Not yet. It will not be open until May or June. They have not fully launched the program yet.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know why is it such a short-lived program? It's a lot of ramping up and then suddenly stops.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you why it's such a short program.
But we qualified.
Yes, we do.
And how much was our funding that we got?
We don't have a set funding. The state of California is $116 million.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from board members? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, communications from the clerk. Anything?
None today.
How about board of directors?
Yes,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I just want to let the board know, we have LAFCO meeting Wednesday night. We'll be reviewing the MSR, the 1,000-page MSR on all the fire services in the service area 3 and 7. We'll be reviewing budget, and we'll be get an update on the executive director search. So LAFCO Wednesday night, 5:30. Sounds exciting.
All right, any other board members? No? No? Yes.
Just a thank you to staff. We've had 3 rather complicated issues with billing and water meters and other stuff that I've been dealing with. And Jenny and her staff have just dived in and fixed it. So I wanted to thank you and appreciate the help.
Okay, and can I announce that I am now a new board member for the Mountain Water County District? So,
Mountain Counties Water
Water
Resources Association.
yeah, they finally sent me the survey.
Lori was just appointed to the board.
Yes, thank you. So I'll be representing.
Excuse
us.
me, Director Anzini.
Yes, and other water districts. So thank you. So now we'll move on to approve the consent calendar. Any item wishing to be pulled?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item 3 for a brief discussion.
Okay, any other items? Okay, what's your deliberation board?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar minus item 3.
All
I'll
right.
second.
All right.
If there are members of the public that would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. This is for any comments on the approval of today's consent calendar minus item number 3. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members wishing to comment on the approval of today's consent calendar.
Okay, let's move to vote for items 1 and 2 on the consent calendar.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, so item number 3, Office of the General Manager.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. It's come to my attention that as part of the Caldor Fire restoration and cleanup work, there's a lot of hazard trees that now are going to be removed that have been on all the private property owners. Basically, long story short, there'll be a lot of timber that hopefully can be salvaged, and SPI and others will be part of that process. They hope to deck it and put it up at the old Camino Mill site, and yet maintain and preserve that timber so it can be cut into lumber. And yet I think they've disassembled or disengaged the water system up there. So there's a request that we help them through this Caldor fire recovery effort to get ag water back to them in whatever method. We'll let staff figure that out, and keep that timber usable so they can get it cut and milled. So again, I would hope that we could direct staff to work with SPI and the other, whoever else is involved, probably RCD and others, could even be state OES, because I believe they are going to fund some of this. So there might be some funding eligible as well for our ag water or whatever. I'm not into the details, but I think we should participate and help out and keep this timber usable, and rather than let it go to waste and rot.
My understanding is a lot of that, the stuff with decking is gonna be pine, and pine will deteriorate rapidly without keeping it wet, and so I strongly support this. I think they're asking for about 6-8 months, I think, to
Yeah, it'd
get
be a
this
limited
done.
duration, and it'll be
And
strictly.
so it's a short duration thing, but I think it fits into the district's help to get this process, the project cleaned up. And yeah, there is a ton of timber coming off that old burn, but if you don't keep it, you have to deck it. When you deck it, you've got to keep it wet to keep it from deteriorating.
By deck it, you mean stack it?
Stack it, yeah.
Overhead spray it to keep
Right.
Yeah, by the mill.
I lived in
Yeah.
timber country, yes.
In brief discussions with them, they'd like to accelerate the removal and have it dropped off there instead of shipping it all the way out. It doesn't fall directly under the ag rate. In the old days when they had the mill operating, they had an ag rate. So this would be a one-time exception under the Caldor emergency the board would have to approve to allow that if the board desires to do that. They also set up or will be setting up a recycled program, so any water that's used that they can recycle to put back on, they'll do that. And what I can do is bring that back to the board at the next board meeting for authority to do that.
So a question regarding item number 3, does this stop this process, or we just maintain what we have on the agenda, or you're going to modify it and bring it back next meeting?
I think since this is an exception to the way we process ag requests, I bring it back to the May 25th board meeting for approval to do that. The board was pretty specific on the ag guidelines last time, and this would also allow the public to be able to comment on it.
Will that do?
I believe so. So with that, we'd probably have to just adopt item 3 as normal, and then you'll direct staff to bring back.
So for the record, the action that Jim is talking about at the next board meeting does not affect this action, nor will it affect the action on the next. It will be separate to this, correct?
Yes.
So we would still need a motion to adopt
Yes.
an action on,
Yes, we do.
this current item.
All right, so there was a,
So I will move that we adopt, or we approve item 3 as written.
okay. All right, been motioned by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Osborne to approve item number 3 as it's stated.
Option 1, this is a time for public comment. Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on consent calendar item number 3. Option 1 moved by Director Veerkamp and second by Director Osborne.
And just for clarity of the record, I think the board clerk can confirm, but staff would accept the direction from the board to bring this back at the next board meeting. So it's not part of the motion. You've made a motion for option 1 with direction to staff to bring the item that you've described at the next meeting.
All right. All right,
Waiting for a vote, guys.
Yes.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
okay, that ends our consent calendar. We'll move on to information items. Item number 4, operations. We're looking forward to this one.
Good morning, President Zini, members of the board, Director Day, nice to see you in person. A while since I missed the last meeting. Just for the members of the public, we did update the PowerPoint from today's packet in light of the much favorable weather last week. So the data that will be presented this morning will be slightly updated, all in a positive context from that contained in the packet. So we're here to give our monthly water supply update. My name's Dan Corkin, Operations Director. I took this shot was actually from last Monday morning, looking at Pyramid Peak, once again covered in snow. For those that drive Highway 50 daily, at least until last weekend, the weekend before last, we don't typically see rock on Pyramid Peak early in the year when it was not a good news. But fortunately, it's once again pure white with snow. Next slide, please. Okay. Overall, obviously, we're still in a dry, drought-type conditions, but recent weather patterns have obviously brought some welcome change. We're continuing to maintain Jacobson Lake around 80%-ish, and we'll meet our carryover targets easily later this year. The rest of the spring runoff, bolstered by last week's storms, as well as the governor's executive order that's obviously been in the news, is really going to set the course for the rest of this year. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail coming forward. Next slide, please. So I updated these slides early this morning. We continue to gain storage. And in fact, in pretty much every single reservoir that we manage, obviously Folsom Reservoir not included, we are actually in flood control operations right now during the drought. So it kind of shows you a very healthy water supply condition for the district. You'll note here the most significant difference has been at Folsom Reservoir. In your packet, we were around 647 last Monday. As of about 5 this morning, we're over 721,000, gaining around 10 to 11,000 acre feet a day right now. So,
Yeah, what do they think that'll peak out? 'Cause we were down there this weekend and noticeably rising, so that was, encouraging. But where do they think they'll hit based off the latest storms and current runoff and snowmelt?
we don't have a formal update. It'll most likely come as part of the Bulletin 120 during the first week of May. I think a lot of digesting of the snow pillow, which will be supplemented by the manual snow surveys over the next 8 to 10 days by all the cooperating agencies. We have a slide that can give my best estimate coming up and go from there. So, next slide, please. Okay, we mentioned our Project 184 reservoirs. Weber Reservoir continues to be full, and we plan to keep that full unless if needed, and it's looking less and less this year that we will need that reservoir, but we still have that obviously available. Jacobson Lake, we have plenty of runoff in that reservoir to go ahead and meet our targets this year. It's looking much less and less Hazel Creek Tunnel, which is favorable to needed to meet that target. That'll allow us to increase our hydroelectric generation once the canal comes back online in the next week or two, probably 2 weeks. We'll probably keep around the same elevation until around mid-June, and then we'll undergo our natural, annual drawdown of the reservoir. From an operational standpoint, from the recreation, it's actually a little bit more favorable to have, at least not quite at the high water mark, there's more places for people to go. We expect, obviously, with Folsom, given the fact it'll be drawn down quickly, there'll be a lot of use again at Sly Park this year, and just gives more place for people to recreate while still meeting our water supply needs. One of the things that we'll look at in the Folsom slides, even though Folsom is continuing to fill very well, overall at the state and especially the federal level, Shasta mainly being such a critically dry year, we do expect a rapid drawdown of Folsom this year. So the decrease of the storage will be quite noticeable and will likely be in the news over the course of the summer. Next slide, please. So our famous slide here, red being 2022 current year, how we anticipate the storage. This is the most conservative again, because as you know, in the fall we show us going down. Most likely that will level off, but we plan to easily meet that carryover 25,000 into September. And whether or not that line between Hazel with and without Hazel is getting closer and closer as the runoff continues, because Mother Nature is doing our work for us. Just for comparison purposes, the kind of goldenrod color, the dark golden, was last year. So you can see we're definitely ahead of where we were last year. Next slide, please. Okay, this is another slide that I did update this morning. March was, again, very healthy demand, and we all know very, very warm, so 21% over last year. When I did the initial PowerPoint, we're actually trending pretty similarly for April, was you'll see in the slide that took a noticeable change. And now, with help from Mr. Mikolo this morning, we actually think we're going to be about 28% less than we were this month last year. So just shows you how volatile spring demand could be and what a difference a couple weeks in the storm can make in our demand. Most importantly, we are continue to not use any storage of our reservoirs. This is all direct diversion, so we continue to maximize our storage in our reservoirs. Next slide, please. And this is another slide that I did update, and you'll see in the board packet we did have our demand continuing greater than last year to 20. In this one, 2021 last year was purple. We've crossed that and more similar to 2020 now for April. Again, in our most conservative analysis, we assume we're going to have another dry go back to last year. That may not be the case. Maybe we've started to turn the corner. We'll go closer to 2020. But from a supply planning standpoint, we continue to assume that we'll have another drying period, warm rest of the spring, and increased demand in May. So those May-June numbers are quite volatile and will depend on if we have any additional precipitation. Once we get to the peak summer, as you can see in almost all years, a pretty similar demand pattern. And then as our outreach continues and some of the governor's executive orders, how that curve will continue to evolve over the next couple months. Next slide, please. Okay, we had projected this might occur at our last update. The Bureau of Reclamation has officially gone to public health and safety allocation. And what that means is there's not enough supply from the federal contracting standpoint to meet unconstrained needs. And so those folks that rely heavily or completely on CVP water from the Bureau of Reclamations have to provide what is a public health and safety allocation or demand, and the Bureau can provide that. Obviously, because we're very fortunate to not to need that water, at this point, we have not requested a public health and safety allocation because of our availability of local supplies. And we plan once again to be able, between Project 184's Permit 2112 and if necessary, Weber Reservoir, we use only local supplies again at Folsom this year. Next slide, please. Okay, this is another slide I updated this morning. And these are values as of midnight. So as you can see, it's gained another probably 4,000 or 5,000 acre feet since midnight. A very healthy, steep climb. That sort of aquamarine or light blue polygon there is the 50-year average. So as you can see, red is 2020, so we're a little bit ahead of 2020. Director Day, how high we go, I think will just depend on some of the snow measurements coming in. I'm guessing we'll probably be somewhere between maybe 750, 800. But again, I expect that drawdown the red will probably be more steep than there was in 2020. And that's because the Bureau of Reclamation needs to meet all of their supply needs as well as their water quality regulations for delta outflow, and not having Shasta to be able to do that, very heavily reliant on Folsom Reservoir. And then obviously you can see where we were last year, the sort of lighter blue there. Unfortunately, we're nowhere near where we were last year. Next slide, please. Okay, and then we'll pivot a little bit here. So literally a couple hours after our last board meeting on March 28th, the governor did issue his executive order, as we thought might be the case. And at that point, he directed the State Water Resources Control Board to enact emergency regulations no later than May 25th. There was an initial workshop last week. And as part of that, directing all water suppliers, such as a district, that we have an adopted plan to move to stage 2. So we're continuing to actively participate in those workshops and understanding exactly what that means. We continue to advocate for recognition of local water supply conditions. From this standpoint, the district is much more healthy than we were last year, and almost, basically a normal water supply condition for the district. So while stage 1 is important to recognize as a potential future water shortage, we do not have an actual water shortage for the district standpoint. So we continue to advocate for recognition of local conditions in that process.
And the state's stage 2 is slightly different than our stage 2.
Exactly, and you remember from Brian's presentations, last time we did an update, there's a slight overlap between those, and probably in the next, I anticipate maybe the next meeting, meeting after that, Brian M. is continuing to follow the state board. He'll show that sort of overlap of walking between the state's minimum and how the district has broken down its drought stages.
Right.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay. And this is just to kind of give a snapshot in the watersheds. This is our Carson Pass snow pillows, so similar snow conditions up near Caples Lake. Black being this year, the light, or I guess it's red in the middle there being last year, and then the blue for 2020. This snow pillow is a little bit out, subject to wind cast and sun, solar irradiation. So it's a little bit less than what we know from actual conditions from our snow course measurements. But what's notable here is every presentation I've been showing you lately has been going down, down, down. Fortunately, we had a nice bump in our water snowpack where it's leveled out and actually even gone up some. So carry out that receding limb of the runoff. But honestly, right now, we're just trying to slowly top off. Our reservoirs are full, so you can only use so much, and so we're trying to bypass that last little bit carefully. Next slide, please. Okay, and I also updated these this morning, so this is just looking ahead, kind of average conditions this week. Next slide. We do show, though, an increased chance of some precip that first week of May, and if you follow, I think depending upon which channel you watch for the news, some of those in that 7-10 day are showing the chance for some more precip again the first week of May before it dries out again. Next slide, please. And so back to mid May, probably more typical late spring conditions, drier conditions. Next slide, please. And then just looking long term, we did have a slight change. That this is the first time this has happened as we've been watching. So this is looking ahead at next fall and what might be the case. And again, this is long-term modeling. And the only thing that's consistent about models is that they're inconsistent. Right now we're exactly right. But what it's showing is that there's a slight So these kind of thicker lines are some of our average dynamic and statistical averages. It's showing actually some potential for ocean cooling again next fall. So all the updates so far have been of a neutral. It's a mild La Nina, so a half degree Celsius, which is not a significant concern, but just something we're watching. And again, as we always do, being prepared if 2023 remains dry. We're very healthy, able to do that with our carryover storage at Jacobson Lake. Next slide. And then we thought it'd be important to sort of recap where the district is in its overall per capita demands. I know Director Dan mentioned this at the last meeting as well, at least last meeting that I was able to attend, that our conservation is ongoing. It's not just when we actually request during a drought type condition. And in fact, some of the analysis that Brian M's team is continuing to track is our per capita demand. So you see we're down about 36% since our peak in 2008. And then since just prior to last drought, we're down 24%. So it's on a per customer basis. So our customers are already saving 24%. So asking to save another 20 on top of that, it's a little bit more challenging to do. And that's some of the prior discussion the board's had on this. And the next slide is just a graphical illustration of that. So this is gallons per capita per day or per average residential customer, the usage pattern over the past 2 decades. You can see a continuous decrease, and we've sort of reached that threshold, somewhat of a static the last 5 years. See, this is about kind of our base demand going forward. Next slide, please. Our outreach continues. It's difficult to talk about the drought when there's 2 or 3 inches of rain in your backyard, but we continue nevertheless of long-term or preparing for that third dry year if necessary. We're hoping that 2023 returns to more normal condition. We were able several times last week to remind our customers about you don't need to irrigate in the rain. Mother Nature is doing that for us. And then working with our regional partners such as Regional Water Authority on ongoing drought outreach measures. That should be it. Any questions?
Couple of things. In light of the potential runoff in Camp Creek, is there any potential we can maintain the 80% plus at Sly Park into September?
No, that's a great question, Director Osborne. And this kind of gets in the minutia of operations, but there is, if we were to do that, our outflow obligations would be quite high, be about 5 times. Rather than our minimum outflow release of 1, we'd be required to release 5 CFS or 10 acre-feet a day for downstream flows. That's per our water right. So from a yield standpoint and minimum runoff next year, we don't really think that's necessary, and that's why our water supply contingency or drought action plan does not call for that. It would basically be moving water through Hazel Creek Tunnel and turning on and releasing it through the dam just to maintain a higher level that we could easily use Hazel Creek Tunnel at the beginning of next winter to reach. So it's not the most efficient use of our water right. It's better to generate hydroelectric power, and if necessary, if the fall is dry, we can go ahead and backfill.
I understand all that with the flume and
Right.
the pre-14 rights and that, but I'm just thinking mainly of Camp Creek. What's the water, the headwaters above Camp Creek, what does it look like to potentially maintain this level?
Oh, okay, so you determine what does natural flow look like?
Right,
in Camp
yeah,
Creek
natural
this
flow.
summer? So after June 30th, our water rate goes down, and we have a pre-14 rate of 12.5 CFS. So Mr. Mikla's demand is around 50 up to 60 CFS during the summer. So even if the water was there from a water right standpoint, that's not, and you recall from our typical curves, that's not how Sly Park operates. So we'd have to artificially backfill that with Hazel Creek Tunnel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much for the presentation. I hope the public views this, and we're going to be putting the PowerPoint up on the website, right? Good.
We did have one member of the public wishing to speak, but they actually just lowered their hand, and now they've raised it again, so.
Okay.
Hi. Hi, this is Cheryl Blychester again. Thank you very much for the presentation, but being a member in District 2 of the Outingdale service area, it's pretty glaring to me that we were left out of your report. And again, we're having a problem annually now of being on restricted water use on the Middle Fork of the Cosumnes River. And this year is going to be unusually bad, not only because of the drought, but because of the Caldor fire filling up our detention pond where you withdraw water on my property. So please, I urge you again to have your operations people get with me to discuss removing the boards in the dam to clear out the sediment that's coming down from the Caldor fire. And please give me an operations plan for what you plan to do as far as using the permissible use license that I granted to cross my property to get to the dam. All right? So again, please meet with me and discuss the water storage, the limited amount of water storage we have here. This annual, 50-gallon per person a day for the entire Outingdale service area is pretty much a very difficult third world situation that we're living in the EID district. And I hope Director Dwyer says that it's very important to him, so I hope you pay attention to our area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments?
It does not appear there are any other members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 4.
Okay, that's the end of this information item. We will move on.
Director, I'm sorry, President Anzani, just one minor comment, and that is just wanted to clarify that as a result of the recent redistricting item, Director Dwyer no longer represents that portion of the district service area. That is now included in Director Osborne's service area.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification. All right. Now we'll move on to item number 5, operations.
And I'm actually going to lead this presentation, and Mr. Mikolas here for any technical details. So stuck with me one more time.
Will there be goats used? That's the question.
I've seen quite a few of them along Highway 50 lately. So.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, good morning again. We're here just to give a brief update on our right-of-way. Boy, this is a tongue twister. I'm going to try as many times as I can to do this. Right-of-way reinforcement program. And this was an update that the board requested in October when we initially introduced this item. So next slide, please. So as we discussed, mainly for members of the public, the board's well aware. When we came to you in October, we had described and illustrated some of the challenges of vegetation management around some of our right-of-ways, especially those key transmission mains. At that time, the board directed staff to proceed with this program and at the same time request an update talking about prioritization, access procedures, easements, things like that, as well as fire risk mitigation. Obviously, we want to be in light of the whole purpose of why we're out there, be careful and our stewards of the environment in terms of fire risk. So next slide, please. Let's wait for electrons to catch up here. Here we go. For members of the public, the transmission mains are our key water supply arteries from the heart or from the treatment plants. We use those transmission mains to convey water to about 130,000 customers. They cross public and private properties, and most of those are outside of public, out of roads. They cross a wide variety of our terrain and canyons, vegetation, all the way from Polk Pines into El Dorado Hills. Of the about 1,200 miles of total district water mains, about 10% of those are transmission mains, about 120 miles. And they vary in size from about 16 to 6 feet in diameter, so large diameter pipelines. Most of those are located not within the roadways. Obviously, that's not typically the quickest point in El Dorado County from point A to point B is not a road, right? Because the roads are following the terrain. So we're going down and across canyons and over. As well as there's almost 350 key appurtenances or portions of these water supply arteries, blow-offs, air relief valves, that are key to maintaining the integrity of those pipelines. So as you can see, those are a number of locations need to be able to access on a regular basis in order to maintain, to safely operate these facilities. Next slide, please. So just this is a quick sort of artery map, if you will, of our two water treatment plants on the very eastern side, Reservoir A near Dickinson Lake, Sly Park, and Reservoir 1 near Forebay, and our water, treated water moving from east to west. So this is all of our customers from Pollock Pines, Camino, Placerville, Shingle Springs, Cameron Park, all the way down into El Dorado Hills. So on the north side, we have El Dorado Mains 1 and 2. On the south side, Pleasant Oak, Maine, and Diamond Springs, Maine. And then the Sly Park intertie, which hopefully be reconstructed here pretty shortly, connecting those two water supply arteries on the east side. So just for scale, for members of the public, we did look at about a 30-foot on-center easement going in about 450 acres that we'll be working on, about half of that needing treatment. So maybe 250 or so acres. We are actually working with individual property owners, and I'll mention in a second, where they're willing to have a wider access. It's much easier to do work and maintain. 30 feet seems like a lot, but large piece of equipment, 30 feet is not very wide. That's 30 feet total, so 15 feet on each side of the pipeline. Next slide, please.
Poor goats.
Or goats. Yeah, maybe in the easy, and this is probably a reason why goats may not necessarily work. So this is illustrative of some of that chaparral, manzanita type habitat, one of our facilities there, which our staff had notably marked with one of our cones. So, so our first effort was to prioritize, how do we start tackling this challenge? So we looked at the level of vegetation that was present at each of these locations, the ease of access of getting to them, the consequences of failure. So what are the complexities of repair? Treating vegetation right next to Pleasant Valley Road would be different than in the Highway 193 Canyon. And so that's our technical staff working, where's our most critical areas? And then also looking at upcoming projects and how do we coordinate with other access needs? As well as, I'll mention it again at the end of, there's a lot of vegetation work, fortunately, that's happening with other members of our community, Fire Safe Council's Resource Conservation District, and where can we tie into some of those projects for community benefit? From that exercise, we identified the Camino conduit, which takes initially water from the dam into the Reservoir A water treatment plant, and then from the water treatment plant all the way across sort of Snows Road to Reservoir 2, 2A, near sort of close to the High Hill Ranch area. Maybe a little bit east of that, actually. And then El Dorado's Main 1 and 2, which takes water from Reservoir 1 water treatment plant, sort of down Pony Express, and then sort of heads off 193 and out sort of along our north half of our service area, which is some quite remote terrain out that way. So, next slide, please. And just to illustrate sort of the challenge, just those 3 pipelines is 903 property owners. So it's a Herculean task for sure. So we're also looking at some of our equipment needs and supply chain issues. We're not immune to it even for this program. So we've sort of pivoted a little bit in seeing how, if we can work because of the cost of some of this equipment on a CAL FIRE grant application. And so we had updated you a couple months ago. That application is pending to hopefully bring in some additional equipment. Until then, we'll use the equipment that we do have. We're hoping just to be able to use that equipment to really increase the pace and scale, the efficiency of some of our work. We do have a trailer chipper now, and we'll continue to use that during the interim. Our staff that have been hired are actually undergoing, I think today or tomorrow and Wednesday, some tree falling training through CAL FIRE has provided a free service. So we're getting some nice training from our staff. And then working on our fire suppression responsibilities with CAL FIRE and Forest Service, some of the techniques and the tools will make sure that our staff are adequately equipped for that effort.
Dan, I think we talked about this in October, I think, when we were getting started on the vegetation management. I think it's good to have control of our own destiny and owning this kind of equipment, and I'm sure it's going to get a lot of use. How about supplementing with contractors? There's a lot of mastication contractors around. It would seem like a we want to incorporate that into our strategy to have our in-house crews and then supplemented by some contract crews.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Director, and I do recall you specifically, and we were trying to find are there large contiguous parcels where that might make sense. Right now, we're kind of focusing actually on our district property below the dam and maybe some smaller parcels. Continue to look at that, and especially if we can package those for a grant application, that'd be key. So that's still in there. Don't worry, do not lose that. We're just trying to make sure we are making demonstrable progress here. So, next slide, please.
I just mentioned that in the last year, the price of masticator contracts and defensible space contractors has skyrocketed.
Right.
Yeah, the prevailing wage challenge is significantly affecting the cost of that work for sure. The Public Works is, there was a discussion in the last pending legislation.
That's right. Goats don't get prevailing wage,
At least not yet.
and they're passive.
Okay, so the next one we'll talk about access agreements. As you described during the fall presentation, the district's arteries or transmission main were acquired over a longer period of time of a variety of means and methods. Some of the key, well, actually all the key transition mains on the east half of the district were all constructed by Bureau of Reclamation as part of the Central Valley Project, the Sly Park unit. So the nature of those access rights are not well defined. And so to the extent where we do have the ability to improve on those, we will. But one of the things we want to make sure that we have a conscious effort not to do is not to defer or reprioritize away from there just because of that. So of the 24 initial property owners that we did send out outreach to, only 3 had questions when we explained what we're doing. Not a lot of people are going to object to doing vegetation management work, especially out in this area. Everybody recognizes that community benefit. So we don't see that as any way to constrain, but when there's an opportunity, we want to go ahead and get formal easements. There's a process and a time and an effort to get through that, and so we're trying to sort of feather that in as feasible. Next slide, please. And then we're also working, obviously, to make sure we fulfill our environmental review requirements. The larger program, we are actually undergoing a program initial study review. And then while our staff are working on smaller efforts, distinct projects, we're going through exemption review processes for those now. Next slide, please.
Dan, isn't there a categorical exemption for the infrastructure and utilities?
So so ongoing vegetation management, ongoing being the key word, is considered not a project under CEQA. In order to make sure to give us, our staff, the clearest opportunity and path forward, taking a conservative approach and just looking at the project holistically. If we do piecemeal, there's a lot of continued repeat efforts, easier just to kind of look at it holistically. And we'll also say that we always take the most conservative route to environmental review that maybe some other agencies may take a different route. So customer outreach, we did, as I mentioned, do a direct mailer to those customers on the initial batch. And we're just sort of doing batches of those portions of that 900 as we go. We don't want to send out a notification and then come to them 9 months later. So our staff are just sort of working methodically, moving forward. We did initial 24, as I mentioned. How many, actually, we don't have a full sense yet of how many total parcels, but just those, as I mentioned, those 3 pipelines alone is 900. So it's obviously several thousand parcels that we're going to be crossing as time goes on.
Dan, when we send out the mailer, the lack of a response, are we considering that affirmation that it's okay to do it?
Well, so I'm going to answer your question maybe not directly. And the reason is that the district has the ongoing obligation, the right to go in, access, and maintain its facilities. We're considering this part as an outreach just to maintain good communication. But if right now one of those pipelines broke, we would go in there and we'd fix it immediately, similar to what we consider this as a maintenance obligation of those facilities. But again, no concern for once we explain some of the background. But I'm just hoping, and I believe that a lot of the language that Jesse's outreach effort of what he put in. It's self-explanatory what we're going in there to do. And I think that's why there's a lack of response to it.
Okay, so we're not asking for permission. We're notifying you that we're coming to maintain our right-of-way.
Right, and then to the extent that, let's say the customer says, oh, I'm planning on doing this, can you come another week? Sure, we're gonna work with them on schedule.
Right.
Especially some of these large parcels have animals, and obviously we wanna work with those landowners, or there's lot gates and things like that we work on, so.
Okay.
When you're in more rural, it's not like we've never been to these facilities before, so a lot of, this is ongoing communication with the same customer group or landowner group, because not all of them actually are customers, right? So,
Okay, that answered it. Thank you.
yeah. And I think we already discussed the rest of the slides. Let's move on. We've also established a dedicated page on our website to the right-of-way reinforcement. And we're going to update that with maps as we go, so really kind of illustrate the progress that we're making. Our customer service staff have also been provided with some background information in the event that one of our customers or landowner gets our letter and they call and they have questions. Some of the initial basic information that may be able to have our customer service staff answer are already preloaded for them. And we will be doing social media updates as we reach key milestones. Hey, great news, we finished Camino Conduit. We're now moving on to El Dorado Main 1 or something like that. And then, like I mentioned, where we're working with fire safe councils and resource conservation district, and to some extent Forest Service, where we cross federal lands, we'll be talking about how we're tying into some of those other projects in our communities. Next slide. So recruitment. Recruitment is, just like everywhere else in the district, has been a little challenging. So the board authorized 3 full-time positions. We have filled 2 of those. We had an internal competition for the 3rd, and the incumbent actually preferred to go to the collections group. So we're continuing to try to fill that third position. But as I mentioned, we do have our skills and training with some of ours, those 2 initial folks that'll get us started where we look to fill that last 3rd position. We're doing some initial work on our property in Sly Park, Camino Conduit, from the dam down, before we start to move on to individual private properties next month, or next week, really, at this point. Next slide, and that's it.
Any questions?
Just a comment, just be prepared as a result of PG&E's efforts to clear the easements for fire. People move here from the urban areas, and we're getting quite a few of these people that don't understand that this green stuff will burn. And you're gonna get some pushback from people saying, why are you doing this and next to my property and blah, blah, blah. So just be prepared for that. It's gonna happen. And it's just a matter of education that people have to understand that we're doing everything we can to protect our property and helping them to protect their property. So, okay?
Thank you.
Any other comments? I will make one comment.
Yeah.
I know that I have electricity at my house, and PG&E has to come in. There's wires going across the back of my yard. So in good conscience, they always notify me. They knock on my door, and I'm not expecting that to happen. They knock on my door and said, can we look in your backyard to see if that tree needs trimming? In the last 7 years, that tree's been trimmed 3 times by PG&E because I've allowed them access. I have no dogs, and they've always, that kind of customer service I appreciate. I'm cooperative. So in the same sense, water delivery to everybody in our district is important to get access. So it's just good conscious property owners, they know this. So, but we just need to make sure we communicate well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And every day, obviously, when we arrive, we're making sure, some of these parcels aren't even occupied, but obviously contacting the homeowner each day when we arrive.
Correct.
So.
Yes, thank you. Is there any comments from the public?
Yes, President Enzini, we have one member of the public wishing to speak. You have the floor, Ms. Blythe.
Yes, hi, this is Cheryl. Yeah, hi, this is Cheryl Blychester again. I'm glad to hear that EID understands the notification regulations that you have. It's a AR 1120. I have been begging EID to please notify me when they're coming onto my property. It's a non-exclusive easement, and EID really occupied and blocked the easement and blocked my ability to cross the property for almost a year while you were building the pump station, the new pump station, and rehabilitating the dam. And now I've asked, before the temporary construction easement was up, to please start notifying me. You've announced it in the Mountain Democrat that this is happening. I have lots of looky-loos coming onto my property. They have to come 800 feet down my driveway to be in my backyard, and they're coming freely right now. And so I have no idea if the people in my backyard are people that I have to run off or if they're EID people. I've posted a sign at the gate that says, EID people, please text this number and let me know you're here, so I don't have to traipse out in my backyard and find out. I have a special problem with EID contractors that have no EID ID on them. And they're blocking the road. They park their trucks. They don't know the rules. They plug into my electrical supply. Sometimes they plug into my water supply when I'm on 50-gallon-a-day watering. And so I really absolutely need you guys to notify me when you're coming on the property, so that just I know that it's you. And when I see you in my backyard or I see you down by the water, I don't have to go running to scare off members of the public. Please do that. I've notified the sheriff's department about the public and I've talked to them at length about how to handle EID if they don't notify me. People, EID, I have to say, again, your engineers and your operations people who I have seen and confronted, and I recognize I don't bother them, of course, but I don't recognize everybody. And it would still help me because I can't see that far away often. It would really help me if you text me. It's just a text to let me know that you're there. It's nothing more. And the number is right there posted on a sign, both there and at the trail down to the dam where you go off of your easement. It's a non-exclusive easement. Please do that. It will make me feel so much more secure on my property, and it won't have me so alarmed. PG&E is going to be doing work on my property here coming up in about 2 months, a great deal of property, which will probably block the easement. I will give you notice. I always give you notice if I have some reason where I might be blocking the access for a day or even a couple of hours. I always notify EID that I'm going to be there. So please be courteous and do the same for me. It is a regulation on your books, and my understanding is that, again, your chief county counsel and or your, Mr. Abercrombie have advised the staff that they don't need to do that. Well, honestly, really, please try to cooperate. Please try to help me keep my property safe. I would very much appreciate it. And then on the issue of fire fuel, wildfire fuel reduction on the easement, on this non-exclusive easement, I've been told that you don't want me to do any fire control on the easement, that I don't have a right to, basically. Well, you guys, when you stripped the whole bank of the river in order to put in your pump station, you went off of the easement onto my property, and then you rehydroseeded with a seed mix, and a natural seed mix, but it does have very tall ryegrass on it. And it's my understanding you have no plan on how to mow that, how to care for it, how to mow it, how to keep the dry grass down. As you said, it will burn. We've had the debris removal, county emergency management debris removal team come down and talk to everybody on the banks of the detention pond on the Middle Fork.
Ms. Blychester, we have a time limit here. We have a time limit here, so please wrap up your comments.
Okay. So on fuel reduction, we've been told by the debris removal managers for the county that we will have a great amount of Caldor fire debris, but also we have downed trees because the pond has been raised and lowered and raised and lowered.
30 seconds.
And so it weakens the roots, and the trees fall into the pond. So we need to come to an agreement about who's going to manage the debris removal in the pond when the trees lose their root system and fall into the pond. Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope to heck you guys will honor your next meeting with me. And I want to invite Director Osborne to come down and see the property and see what's going on and see my concerns. And
Thank you.
I hope we have as good a relationship. Yeah.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. All right. So this concludes our information item. We'll move on to action items. Item number 6.
Move one.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Day that item number 6, option
Madam Chair.
1, be approved.
Director Veerkamp will recuse himself from this item.
Okay, Director Veerkamp will recuse himself. Any comments from the public?
Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 6. Option 1 moved by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Day, and Director Veerkamp has recused himself.
Okay. Board members, go ahead and vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5 voting aye, motion carries.
All right, item number 7, finance. Take it away.
Well, good morning, Board. My last hurrah here. Should have brought the party poppers. Yeah, I don't need those.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mark.
that.
Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. This actually is pretty straightforward since last we met, this item. This is a consideration to authorize to approve the deposit of the refunding revenue bonds, the Series 2022A, with the California Public Employees Retirement System, which is PERS. And I'll explain a little bit of what happened since last we met. Next slide. Just a little bit of the historical information here. Next slide.
Go out with the song.
I don't sing. You would know why. So on the at the April 11th meeting, there was a discussion essentially with the finance team prior to meeting with our bond counsel. And there was talk is we could deposit the excess funds, because we know once we deposit in and once CalPERS allocates the 21% earnings, that we will probably be super funded for the UAL with CalPERS. So there's a discussion, do we do a 115 trust, which CalPERS has one, put the excess funds there and then just have them go over and pay the UAL over time as we project that one would occur? Or can we just bring them into the district and as restricted funds and then do the same thing over time? Bond counsel essentially called shortly after the meeting and said they were researching, but that, oh, next slide, excuse me. We can go to the next slide. That the bonds are actually, they're governed by the refunding bond law, which is the legal authority for the issuance of these bonds. And so, therefore, they could only be issued only for the purpose of payment on the district UAL at closing. Therefore, they have to all be deposited at CalPERS. So that was the legal opinion, and we, the rest of the finance team said, we'll defer to that. And so, next slide, please. What's remaining to happen is pricing the bonds, which will occur tomorrow. We've had a couple meetings last Friday and this morning before at 8 a.m. To discuss the marketplace. It slowly has gone downhill from our point of view. Over the weekend, it's kind of improved a little bit, so we're hopeful tomorrow that we'll recover some of the lost interest. So we'll be able to issue at a little lower true interest cost than even was predicted last Friday, or essentially. I think Jim has it.
Yeah, as of Friday, the present value cash flow would be a little north of $10 million and the gross cash flow difference would be almost 16 million. So it's still a very positive number. Our financing team said anything, the present value as a percentage of UAL refunded was 14.3%. They said anything north of 5% is a real good deal. So they're strongly recommending we proceed with that.
What kind of interest rates are we looking at?
About 4.7%.
It depends on the term of the bond. And right now, actually what, to me, got better was the first year, or the first 10 years interest rates will be potentially a little less than we even saw last Friday. The good thing is most of the cash flow savings is like in that first 10-year period, and we have a 10-year call. So if the market changes over the next, at that point in time, we can go refinance again at that point in time and recoup some more present value savings. So it's structured right now, I think, as best it can be.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I just, the higher our interest rate gets, as that gentleman pointed out before, we're arbitraging this and the margin gets thinner and that increased risk. And yeah, just.
yeah.
Oh,
The way I looked at it is we have more funds in play and we've at least guaranteed that we're, maybe 2.5% lower than what CalPERS expects based on their discount rate of 6.8 going forward.
right, and we're taking our best estimate. I mean, obviously, if something hugely dramatic happens in the marketplace, like circa 2008, nobody can, it's hard, well, I guess some people did predict it, but it's harder to predict, and I think there's more guardrails now, but, so hopefully we'll just have the normal ebb and flow of the marketplace and nothing catastrophic.
Right, and I think CalPERS, again, I think I mentioned last meeting, they were projecting about a 5.8 this year, so they're potentially a small UAL rising again. We are going to carve out that cash flow savings, again, put it aside, and then whatever, say, this excess funding that happens with CalPERS, hopefully that would cover it. If not, then we would take that cash flow savings that we're going to retain in-house in that other reserve fund. So the board options today was just direct the staff to deposit all the funds with CalPERS once that funding occurs. I think it's mid-May, and then or take other action.
You have to read that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Direct staff to deposit all 2022A refunding revenue bond proceeds with the California Public Employees Retirement System. Option 2 would be to take other action as directed by the board. Option 3 would be to take no action. We all recommend option 1.
Okay, Director Beerkamp.
Yeah, Mark, so the excess funds, they'll be accruing or invested to
Yes.
accrue? Okay, so will it be going to the PERS 115 or?
It all goes with our account at
Okay.
CalPERS, but yes, it'll earn whatever, earnings we do on all the other funds.
Okay. Given that, I'll move option 1.
Okay,
I'll second. The comment, I just checked the bonds, they just dropped a tenth of a basis point, so hopefully that number that 4.7 will be pretty good.
Yes, we'll know pretty solid by noon, I think it is, tomorrow.
depends on if Twitter gets bought. Never mind.
Comment.
Yes.
So, Mark, just to be clear, we have two things going on with the issuance of these bonds for the PERS. One is the difference between what we owe and the unfunded liability and what we get in bond proceeds. And we're thinking that's going to be a positive number, right? We're issuing $80 million worth of bonds, and the actual obligation is going to be 70-something rather, right?
Actually, I think we had 80 as the outside number. It'll be closer to the 71 million, I believe, which is what CalPERS has at this point in time
That we're
calculated.
issuing or that we think is our current unfunded
The current unfunded liability is around 71. Yes.
So we're going to try to hit that mark.
Yes, that's the hope, yes.
Okay,
Um,
because
but-
before when we discussed this, we thought there was going to be some excess, and that was a discussion about should we bring it in-house and manage it, or should we leave it with CalPERS? And then we found out by the bond rules and regulations, we have to put that proceeds into CalPERS.
The last part is correct. The 71 actually is the calculated liability at the moment. But once CalPERS assigns us the 21% earnings, because they're a fiscal year behind, we will then go into an overfunded status. That's what's creating the overfunding.
The 21%.
Okay.
So we're not necessarily, we're not gonna do the 80 million, we're gonna do 71
point
plus a
something.
little.
Yes, plus
Okay.
some,
So we'll be over, but not necessarily by that much.
yeah, we'll know hopefully by late August, early September, what that number is.
Okay.
Once they do their actuarial studies for the whole.
So
CalPERS
the
system.
the option then to bring that surplus in-house and manage it is off the table.
Correct.
Okay, got it. The other part of the equation is the money that we're going to save over time, this 10 million-ish amount, we do have control of that.
Yes.
And we did direct that go into a reserve account, an isolated, whatever you want to call, bucket, I think was a term used in budgeting. We wanted to go into a bucket. And then we have the option, and I think we should look really hard at retiring those bonds at the 10-year mark.
So
With the amount of savings that we're going to accumulate and get that as much as we can off the books.
So that's one way to do it, if enough enough money's still in that reserve. The other method is if the interest rates are lower than what we're issuing at, to just refund new revenue bonds.
Yeah.
So that's what the 10-year call provision is.
And that will be brought to the board during the budget time, and the board will be updated on what is in that reserve account.
I have a question that's made me think about well, first of all, that's gonna be George's problem 10 years from now, and he's gonna be the only one. But, yeah.
Well played.
But, so can we, as the savings accumulate, hopefully, in our reserve fund, rather than getting our usual 1% or 0.5% of, earnings on them, can we could we go buy some of our own bonds and get 0.7% or something? I mean, pretty stable, safe investment.
I would have to defer that to the investment people. I don't know what would restrict that, but I don't know.
So it sounds like we're having a workshop on this whole thing, and we really have something that we've got to vote on, or you can retake
Well,
your
maybe bring
votes.
back- bring
But
that
what
back.
also doesn't prevent the district, I don't think, and council maybe knows the answer, is that we could actually do or have a 115 trust with CalPERS, which they invest, and actually maybe fund that. But it would be directed, there would be their provisions, but I think that would still be on the table, but I might be wrong.
My recommendation is let's get the first year of savings,
Yes.
and then look at options where we can park the money to get the best interest rate safely for our ratepayers.
Right,
And,
okay.
and put that suggestion on the shelf, because it really is, the PERS income on the pensions is actually very good. I mean, I'm a PERS member, and you all are, and you get those records, but, certainly the investment was very good for, it doesn't matter which year, so.
Right.
They just don't give a big increase in your monthly amount when it's time, so they were a little cheesy about that. Anyway. We have a vote. Members of the public, opportunity for them to speak.
President Anzini, at this time, it does not appear there are any members of the public Wishing to speak on action item number 7, option 1, moved by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Osborne.
Okay. Members of the board, vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Okay. At this time, we will go into closed session. Does our general counsel have anything to say?
Thank you, President Anzini. We will be meeting in closed session to discuss 2 matters, both of which are agendized as closed session items A and B. I anticipate that our discussion of these 2 items will require at least a half an hour.
Just for, to have an even time, we will say the board will not report back prior to 10:45. They could report after, and for the purposes of closed session, this meeting will be shut down, and we will reopen once the board convenes back into open session.
Okay, we'll bring this meeting back to order. General counsel?
President Anzini, the board met and conferred with council in relation to closed session A and with its real property negotiators in relation to closed session B. The board provided direction but took no reportable action for either of those, and that concludes my report.
All right. We've looked, board members, you've looked at the items that we have on the future. Is there anything you want to add to it, to add to the general manager's list?
We're just bringing back the item on the Director Veerkamp's item on working with SPI on the timber.
Great. Anything else? We'll declare this meeting closed.
At 11:26 a.m.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Good.